Good morning, everyone. Apologies, a few technical difficulties starting today, but we're ready to kick on now. Welcome to online session number 5. This is for the Glasshouse-Pumicestone proposed local plan area. I just want to say the Council's committed to undertaking thorough community engagement for the new planning scheme project, while also keeping our community and staff safe. That is our highest priority. Due to the current COVID-19 health risks, some of the scheduled in-person events have had to be cancelled. But community input is important. To ensure we receive as much feedback as possible, Council has scheduled live online sessions, and we're utilising a range of other online tools to receive your input. At the same time, you can still visit a physical display of the information, and that's at our Council customer service desks, libraries, and the mobile library. So a bit of housekeeping for today. We are encouraging everyone to provide their feedback via the website, which I'll be able to show you in the second half of this session. We also encourage you to give us a call or email. The consultation period runs until the 31st of March 2022. Now, for this session, we are using Microsoft Teams. It's a version called Teams Live. The way it works is that we receive questions through the chat function, so we encourage you to do that. How you post questions is subject to the device or computer that you're using. Generally on computers, it's pretty easy to find. There's a little speech bubble in the top right-hand corner. If you're using an iPhone or some other mobile device, do have a look in that top right-hand corner and you might see a little chat function. Press the button, it'll take you through to the chat view, and then you can post those questions. Happy to receive questions as we go through the session. I'll be monitoring that as the presentation proceeds, and we'll pick that up at the end. We will try to answer as many questions as possible at the second half of the session. It is limited to an hour, unfortunately, so if there are outstanding questions, we can still answer them, or we can give you more detailed responses or more detailed one-on-one by contacting the team by phone or by email after the session. In addition, there is a recording of the presentation which will be published on the event page following the session. So you need to go back to the Glasshouse event page and you'll be able to see that's recording there, and then take your time watching it, and hopefully that will assist with forming up some advice to us. So before we commence with today's session, the Sunshine Coast Council acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land, the Kabi peoples and Jinnabura peoples, their connection to their traditional lands, and their role in shaping the identity of the Sunshine Coast. So in terms of today's presentation, I'm very glad to welcome Jason, the new planning scheme coordinator. He will present the main portion, the first half of this presentation. I'll be your moderator, facilitator. My name is Paul. I'll pick it up at the second half, and I will field those questions that you submit to the chat function, and Jason and I will be able to provide some responses. So I'll pass over to Jason. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, for that introduction. Hello, everyone. So just in terms of the purpose of today's session, we're seeking to inform the community about the new planning scheme project and this preliminary consultation that is currently underway. We're also seeking to explain how this proposal relates to your local area, being the Glasshouse-Pumicestone proposed local plan area, and also importantly to provide information on how to get involved and how to have your say on this important project. So just some background in terms of the new planning scheme project. So some of you may be asking, what is a planning scheme? Quite a fundamental question. Certainly a planning scheme is a document that are prepared by local councils to regulate development, growth and change within a local government's area. So regulating development is the fundamental purpose of a planning scheme. That is done through setting a clear vision and strategies to manage future growth within the council area. It sets out the state, regional, local development assessment policies that development will be assessed against. We also seek through planning schemes to balance competing interests that are involved in planning and development processes. You know, economic, environment, social considerations all need to be put into the mix in terms of achieving that balance. It's also important to acknowledge and recognise that we do have a current planning scheme in place, being the Sunshine Coast Planning Scheme 2014. So once this new planning scheme is produced and comes into place, it will take effect and replace the current Sunshine Coast Planning Scheme 2014. Just a little bit of background on the new planning scheme project. So Council resolved to prepare a new planning scheme back in January 2021. This followed a review of the current planning scheme that took place in 2020. Now, that review found that whilst the current planning scheme has been operating generally quite well and effectively, there were certainly areas where that planning scheme document could be updated to reflect more recent state, regional and local planning initiatives, and also to reflect more recent information and data that we are constantly getting updated through our research and studies and investigations in terms of GIS data and supporting information. It's also important to note that a new planning scheme project is a multi-year project, so they take quite a bit of time to produce, with many steps along the way, and I'll go through those stages in a little bit more detail shortly. The project is intended to be completed by 2024, and certainly Council is working towards that time frame as we progress. Once again, through a planning scheme project, there are many interests and stakeholders to be involved in these processes, and lots of different interests to weigh up and balance as part of that. And as I mentioned before, once we adopt the new planning scheme, it will replace the current planning scheme. We also need to work within what we call a planning framework for the Queensland planning system. So planning schemes, most importantly, must be consistent with state and regional policy documents. So in relation to that, we do have the Queensland Planning Act, which operates across Queensland. We also have the single state planning policy that sets out all the state interests when making a planning scheme. And for the South East Queensland region, we also have the South East Queensland Regional Plan 2017, or Shaping SEQ, which sets out the land use strategy for the whole of the South East Queensland region, which the Sunshine Coast is part of. The new planning scheme will also seek to integrate some of the local planning strategies and policies that Council has in place that also will inform the new planning scheme. That includes the Council's corporate plan document, which sets out Council's vision to be Australia's most sustainable region, healthy, smart and creative, as well as a number of supporting strategy documents, including the Environment and Livability Strategy, the Regional Economic Development Strategy and the Community Strategy. There's also a range of other supporting documents that support those overarching strategies, including such things as the Sunshine Coast Design Book or the Yellow Book. There's also the Coastal Hazard Adaptation Strategy and the Integrated Transport Strategy. So there's a suite of documents that help to inform the preparation of a new planning scheme. This diagram here shows a simplified flowchart of the process for preparing a new planning scheme, and this shows 8 key steps along the way. Currently, we're in the early stages of the process, and this shows it on the diagram here where we're up to on step 2, which is about undertaking this preliminary public consultation period. This is the first of 2 main consultation steps with the community for this project. The second step in that consultation will be at step 5, which is formal public consultation on the proposed planning scheme itself. Most likely that consultation will occur sometime during 2023. And of course, it shows that the project is intended to be completed, being the adoption and commencement of the new planning scheme in 2024. In saying that, there are a number of steps in this process that are not in Council's full control in terms of timing. That includes the state interest reviews and planning minister reviews that are required along the way as the planning scheme progresses through the process. So now I'd like to just touch upon the preliminary consultation in general that we're undertaking, and then in subsequent slides we'll go into more detail for the Glasshouse-Pumicestone local plan area in particular. So the preliminary consultation period, it's not a requirement under state planning legislation to undertake preliminary consultation. So it's a non-mandatory step. However, this council is committed to ensuring that the community plays a thorough role in the planning for the region, and certainly the preliminary consultation is seen as a vitally important step in that. So the early consultation that we're undertaking provides an opportunity for input from the community before we actually prepare a draft planning scheme. So the feedback we receive now, importantly, will help to inform the drafting of the planning scheme. So what we're seeking initial feedback on from the community as part of this preliminary consultation is a proposed vision for the region in 2041 and the regional planning directions that will support that vision. We're also looking at feedback on the proposed composition and boundaries for the proposed local plan areas that we're proposing. Also seeking feedback relating to those local plan areas being the proposed vision statements and planning directions for those particular local plan areas, as well as a range of topical planning issues that have been arising in our feedback that we're receiving in relation to the current planning scheme and the issues that are coming through that, and just some topical planning issues that are arising. So the feedback that we're seeking at the moment is probably primarily being sought via completion of surveys and other online tools which are available on the Council's Have Your Say website. The preliminary consultation finishes on the 31st of March, so we'd be certainly keen to hear from you all by that date. As mentioned, what we're seeking consultation on, or what we're seeking feedback on at the moment through this consultation, we're proposing a vision for what the Sunshine Coast could look like in 2041. And this vision this overarching vision is reproduced on this slide that you can read on the slide now. It also includes proposed regional and local planning directions to manage growth and change. So how do we implement that vision? Importantly, we're seeking to reflect what we think the community values and what they would like to see into the future for the Sunshine Coast. And once again, it's about seeking that balance between the different needs and interests of our community, recognising that we are a community of communities and there are many different interests to weigh up in the process. In terms of the regional planning directions for the new planning scheme to manage growth and change, these are set out in the documentation that is available on Council's website. So we'd certainly encourage you to hop on there and view those proposed regional planning directions. And they're set out under the following 5 themes, being shaping sustainable growth, how the shape and form of development will occur across the region. A smart economy, how we're going to lead to a prosperous region in terms of jobs, employment, and opportunities for the future. A healthy and resilient environment. We all know the Sunshine Coast is renowned for its environment, and making sure that those features are protected as we develop and grow. A strong and creative community of communities is also a focus of these regional planning directions, recognising, as we said, we have a community of communities that are different, and celebrating that diversity and making sure we protect those important local character values. And finally, connected people and places, looking at the regional planning directions and how we can ensure that our communities are physically connected through a transport network and also through communications and other ways of connecting. This next slide just shows a simplified settlement pattern map for the Sunshine Coast region. What us as town planners typically refer to as a strategic plan map for the region and the preferred land uses in 2041. So this shows a variety of different land use types, including the living areas, the coastal living areas, the hinterland living areas, as well as the rural residential areas that provide a different lifestyle choice for the community. It also shows some of the new and emerging communities, such as Palmview, Calandra South or Aura, and also Biwa East, a major development area under the South East Queensland Regional Plan. It also shows some of the industry employment areas that will accommodate future jobs and employment growth for the region. The map also shows some other elements, such as the network of activity centres. These are the centres that are focused for retail, commercial and other activities. It obviously shows Maroochydore as the key regional centre for the Sunshine Coast and supported by a range of other centres, both along the coastal corridor and within the rural and hinterland areas. This map also conveys and shows some of the key green space elements for the Sunshine Coast that we're seeking to recognise, including the regional interurban break, which is particularly relevant for the Glasshouse-Pumicestone local plan area, the Lower Mooloolah floodplain, and the Blue Heart, which covers the main parts of the Maroochy River floodplain. Important green space elements that help to define the settlement pattern for the Sunshine Coast moving forward. There's also some important transport elements that are shown on this map, including some future public transport corridors, the CAMCOS heavy rail corridor, as well as the mass transit corridor along the coastal corridor. So this map is part of the information and material that's been released for consultation at the moment, and certainly we're seeking feedback from the community on that and the broader regional planning directions. In addition to the region-wide planning directions, this consultation is also keen to hear from the community about the local planning for our region. We have identified a range of local plan areas across the region, which each have their own vision statement that is proposed, as well as some planning directions to manage future growth. Those proposed local planning directions for each local area respond to key constraints and opportunities that exist in those areas, as well as considering community values and aspirations that we've heard from the community in the past whilst consulting with the community in past planning processes, as well as also responding to some of the local issues and challenges that are emerging in some of these local areas. We feel that the benefits of local planning are quite significant in terms of protecting the local character and also providing the opportunity to recognise that a planning scheme should not be a one-size-fits-all and that it should be tailored to suit the needs of different local areas. So this map shows the overall local plan areas that we've identified as part of the proposed planning scheme. So 18 proposed planning areas have been identified in total, and they apply across the whole of the Sunshine Coast region. The boundaries of these local plan areas that we're proposing have been used, the boundaries have been based upon suburb boundaries, locality boundaries, and other features such as major roads and other elements. This map and slide at the moment also shows the location of the Glasshouse-Pumicestone proposed local plan area relative to the other local plan areas that are proposed. I'd now like to talk a bit more in detail about the Glasshouse-Pumicestone proposed local plan area in particular. So the Glasshouse-Pumicestone proposed local plan area is located in the southern part of the Sunshine Coast region, stretching from the coast, taking in the northern part of Bribie Island, the Pumicestone Passage, and across to the hinterland areas. It includes the localities of Glasshouse Mountains, Beerburrum, Coochin Creek, Bribie Island North, and also some of the southern fringes of Peachester and Beerwah. It's also important to recognise that this local plan area takes in the regional interurban break, which is included in this area. This is a significant element, as mentioned, that provides a separation, if you like, between Greater Brisbane and the Sunshine Coast. So the forestry and rural areas that you experience as you travel from Brisbane through to the Sunshine Coast. And that's something that this council is certainly keen to ensure is protected into perpetuity. In terms of the proposed role of the Glasshouse-Pumicestone local plan area, there are a number of roles that we've identified that in a region-wide context are important to recognise. As mentioned, that regional landscape value is quite important for this area, and being the major green space of the regional interurban break. There's also significant rural production values for this area, and it contains a lot of the good quality agricultural land that is used for production. The area also provides a range of different living opportunities for the community, including hinterland living, rural living, and also rural residential living. So a variety of lifestyle choices for the community. There's also a strong recreation focus for this area. The Glasshouse Mountains and the associated conservation forestry areas provide a lot of recreational opportunities, not just for local residents in the community, but also for the broader Southeast Queensland region. There's also a tourism focus for this area, being clearly a strong nature and rural-based element to that tourism. And the area also supports major habitat and biodiversity values that are recognised locally, state, nationally, and I dare say internationally, with protected wetlands along the Pumicestone Passage, the Glasshouse Mountains themselves, and other significant features. Each of the proposed local plan areas contain various information, including a proposed vision statement. So the vision statement for the Glasshouse-Pumicestone local area recognises that this is a gateway to the Sunshine Coast, this particular area, so it has that important role to play there. There's also those significant landscape, scenic, cultural, recreation and rural production values. We want to see those values protected and enhanced. And within that broader regional interurban break that we've mentioned. In terms of the Glasshouse Mountains township itself, where the vision looks at that township remaining a small town with a strong heritage character and providing a range of services for locals and visitors. Beerburrum Township, being the other principal township in the local plan area, will remain a relatively small village with that intimate rural character and identity, and serving the needs of the locals and visitors to that particular area. Outside of the townships, the vision envisages that the rural residential areas will continue to enjoy a semi-rural lifestyle on larger lifestyle lots. And the vision also anticipates that the rural areas will continue to thrive and accommodate important rural and agricultural production activities, but also looking at nature and rural-based tourism as also ongoing opportunities. In terms of the vision that I've just outlined there then is a range of local planning directions that are proposed to support that vision for this local area. And I'll just run through those in turn now. So in terms of the local planning divisions for the Glasshouse-Pumicestone area, we're not seeking to change or minimal change to building heights within this particular local plan area. And generally, in most cases, that's probably in the order of around 8.5 metres or 2 stories. There is also not anticipated to be minimal expansion to the urban and rural residential areas, so they'll remain largely as they are under current planning scheme commitments. We're also seeking to retain large or relatively large urban and rural residential minimum lot sizes to maintain the character and amenity of this area. Also seeking to maintain controls on advertising signage, particularly in our rural and scenic areas and along our tourist and scenic drives. Retaining compact centres and discouraging out-of-centre development is also a planning direction that we've identified for this area, so that the commercial and retail areas are contained to those dedicated centres in Glasshouse and Beerburrum. We're also investigating, as a proposed planning direction, some housing diversity close to the Glasshouse Mountains town centre. This might be in the form of housing such as dual occupancies or duplexes and townhouse type development, providing that housing diversity for our growing and diverse demographic population as we continue to grow. There's also a proposed planning direction about investigating some opportunities for some retirement aged care living within the Glasshouse township, and that's something that those opportunities will be further explored as we get into the more detailed drafting of the planning scheme. There's also some planning directions around protecting the water quality of the Pumicestone Passage, very important as a key wetland and ecological area, and also Somerset Dam. Some of the western parts of this local plan area are a catchment area for Somerset Dam, which is a water supply for southeast Queensland. We're also seeking, as part of the new planning scheme, to maintain Halls Creek area within the rural zone and outside the urban growth boundary. So this is the area that has been identified under the Southeast Queensland Regional Plan as a potential future growth area. However, there is no commitment for urban growth in this location at the moment, and certainly Council's position is for that area to be maintained in a rural zoning and not for further or future urban growth and development. We're also seeking to maintain current limits on further subdivision in rural areas. That has been a fairly long-standing position of Council, and also through the Southeast Queensland Regional Plan. Very important as well that we retain the strong interurban breaks between the townships and the settlements to retain their separate identity and character of those towns. We're also seeking to propose specific provisions for development in the regional interurban break that exists within this local plan area to ensure that the development that occurs in that location is compatible with the values that interurban break has. And finally, we also have a proposed planning direction to ensure that we protect the forestry operations that occur in this area into the future. This next slide attempts to summarise in a quite simple way the anticipated level of change that we might expect in this area under the new planning scheme. So as it shows here, that there's quite a very low level of change anticipated between the current planning scheme and the proposed new planning scheme. So not a high level of change at all. And also, it's the second dial that you see on the slide here, from the current on the ground situation to what we might expect in the new planning scheme, there's still a relatively low level of change. There is some potential that may not have been taken up at the moment under the current planning scheme, and in the new planning scheme, that potential may be realised into the future, but certainly still a low level of change is anticipated in this area. So what does all this mean? Well, certainly we're very keen to hear from you as the community to what do you think about the proposed vision and planning directions for your local area? Do you think the proposed boundaries for the local plan areas that we've identified are about right? Is there anything else that you'd like to see protected or enhanced through the planning scheme? And what types of development would you like to see encouraged or supported in your local area that may not already be identified? So all that feedback we're seeking is primarily through Council's Have Your Say website. If you were to scan onto this QR code here or visit the website address shown, that will take you through to that detail and how to have your say, including completing some surveys and also how to get in touch with us. So in summary, Council is preparing a new planning scheme and we're in the early stages of that process. This preliminary consultation is going to be one of the first of two main opportunities to have your say. As I mentioned earlier, the second opportunity will be once we draft the new planning scheme, there'll be a second phase of consultation with the details of that draft planning scheme and putting that out for a further round of consultation in due course. This preliminary consultation is currently underway and will close on the 31st of March. So we encourage you to have your feedback and have your say before the closing date. And as I mentioned before, that feedback is about filling in a survey, as I said, scanning the QR code, jumping on Council's Have Your Say website and providing that feedback by the closing date. And as mentioned, if you do have any questions, our project team is here to answer those questions. The website also contains details of how to reach out to us and contact us if you have any questions or want to seek further information that you can't find on the web pages. So that concludes the presentation component of this session. I thank you for your attention and I hope that you've gotten some information out of that session to help determine how to have your say and how to find out more information. I will now hand back over to Paul. He'll then run us through some of the question and answer session now. So thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Jason. Thank you for that. It was a great presentation. So this portion of the session is what we call a question and answers. As I said at the start, we really encourage you to submit your questions to that chat function. We've received a few already, so we'll get into them in a second. We've got around about 30 minutes for this portion. Obviously, we may not get to all of the questions. You're welcome to follow up with us and provide some contact details, and there's various ways to do that in the website. I'll get to that when I take you through the website. We have a QR code here on the screen. If you scan that, that will take you to the Have Your Say website, so you can find out how to get in contact with us. So you have multiple ways to speak to us and to seek advice. But getting into some of the questions that have been submitted so far, we'll just start at the top and work our way down. The first one was a question around public transport options. So what public transport options will be considered in the Glasshouse-Pumicestone local plan area, and I suppose similar to some questions we had previously this week about how does public transport delivery service fit into the new planning scheme project?
Yeah, certainly the planning scheme itself is not responsible for delivering public transport, but what the planning scheme can do is ensure that our land use and development decisions help to support those public transport routes and ensure that they're well patronised through land use decisions. I'd also point to the fact that the state government, just as of the last day or so, has released a public transport strategy for the southern Sunshine Coast. So in terms of the Glasshouse-Pumicestone area, you might have to check that out as well to see what the state government has in mind in terms of future provision of public transport, recognising that public transport provision is largely a role for the state government and other government agencies to deliver on those projects.
There's the next couple of questions are sort of interrelated. I'm guessing the same guest has posted them. Discussion around what is termed natural economic resources and the ongoing viability. Give the examples of agricultural land, forestry, fisheries, and extractive resources. In this particular case, the guest, you've asked the question around key resources area. The draft vision statement makes no reference to these important natural resources and whether they will be reflected in the Glasshouse local plan area. I note you do go on to then refer to the local plan vision statement, reflecting the important role that extractive resources play for Glasshouse and the region, and whether or not the proposed planning directions should reflect that as well, that these extractive resources are an important element of the region. And I know the regional planning directions do talk about extractive resources, but is there a part for them to play in within the boundaries of the Glasshouse-Pumicestone local plan area?
Yeah, thanks. That's a good question. The extractive resources are scattered across the region, so they're not unique to this local plan area. They exist in a range of other locations across the Sunshine Coast. And certainly, as Paul mentioned, at the regional planning direction scale, there is a recognition that there are these extractive resource areas evident in the area, in the region as a whole, and certainly the planning scheme does have a role to play to ensure that those resource areas are identified and that those resource areas are protected from encroachment or other development occurring in the vicinity that may prejudice or compromise the future potential extraction of those resources. So certainly the planning scheme does have a role to play in recognising and protecting those resource areas. And that, as I said, is not unique to the Glasshouse area. It does have some of them, but not all of them. So it's probably more addressed at that regional planning directions scale.
I think that also comes in, there was a comment made as well on the question about whether there's any existing use rights, and obviously the new planning scheme can't compromise an existing use rights. So if there is an existing approval for extractive resource in that area, the scheme wouldn't be seeking to remove that.
That's correct. Yeah, I mean, if there's existing uses already occurring, then a new planning scheme does not affect those existing uses. It's only for new uses or new development where the new planning scheme would be able to have an influence. So that's an important principle to recognise generally.
Okay. Question here, a very interesting question about there's an option being put up by TMR regarding the Bruce Highway Western Alternative route, which is reported to be mapped somewhere between Beburham and Glasshouse Mountains along Steve Irwin Way. Is that something that we are considering at this point in time, or we obviously have discussions with TMR? So I suppose from what I can tell from the question from yourself, the guest, is that do we work with TMR to ensure our trail roads like this do not impact on the vision, or that they're considered, let's say, considered as part of the process?
Yeah, certainly. I can't probably comment too much on that specific project that's being mentioned there, but it's not in my area of expertise. But certainly Council does work closely with the Department of Transport and Main Roads with their road planning and transport projects to ensure that we have a single integrated transport system for the Sunshine Coast, recognising that certain parts of the network are state-controlled elements and certain parts of the network are local council-controlled parts of the network. So certainly is a collaborative approach, and we always keep in touch to make sure that we know what each other are up to in that space, and to ensure we're getting some integrated outcomes.
So a few more questions coming through. Question, and I suppose this is very much related to the boundaries of the Glasshouse-Pumicestone local plan area. The guest, you've asked the question around Golden Beach, and I suppose I'm trying to understand what the relationship is between the Golden Beach area in terms of its local plan area and the Glasshouse boundaries. Because obviously the Golden Beach is well within the Caloundra and surrounds local plan area.
Yeah.
Maybe this is probably a good one for me to jump over to the Hive. We're getting close to 11:15, so if I jump over to the Have Your Say website and start to show you what the map, for instance, and we can have a look at how that relationship is.
Yeah, and I think there might be potentially some confusion there around where people think they might be located in this proposed local plan area. Certainly, as Paul, you've mentioned, the Golden Beach location is actually part of the Caloundra and surrounds local plan area in the proposal. But certainly the Pumicestone area, this does take in the lower parts of the Pumicestone catchment.
But certainly the Golden Beach boundary itself is part of that Calandra and surround. So
Yeah.
there was a joint or another question within that posting regarding how that would affect beachside tourism, or as they've talked about landscaping. I think that's more to do with what the standards for delivery for the Golden Beach area. Now they're all contained within the Calandra and surround. So yes, there's definitely a relationship between Golden Beach and Calandra and its neighbouring communities in that regard. Look, I'll just take you to the site itself. So this is the Have Your Say website where all the consultation occurs. If you're not familiar with it and haven't been to it, you access it by going to the main council website and scrolling down from this top icon, sites, to Have Your Say. When you click on that, it will take you through to the main consultation page. This is where all councils' public consultation occurs, where you can get access to all the information and make comments. And in this case, you can see our new planning scheme project is right at the top. So if you click through there, it will then take you to our landing page, our home page for all the information. So everything from how to access the events. You can view the calendar by access now. We can see the regional directions, where we talked about already. The regional directions, you can understand how important assets like extractive resources sit more broadly in the region, amongst a number of other items. Planning for our local areas, that's where you drill down to the Glasshouse-Pumicestone local plan area, and we'll go to that in a second. And the hot topics, these are some of our trending themes that have come out over the last number of years, and we think are very critical to the region more broadly, as well as to potentially your local plan area. As well as on this page, we've got a nice interactive video to watch to explain a bit of what the project's about. Links to our surveys. This is really important. That this is where you can give very quick feedback to us. We want you to go into these surveys and fill them out. Scrolling down further, if you want to read everything about the plan directions, regional and local, go to these two PDFs. They contain everything in one handy location. So that's a really good place for you to sort of absorb information to your local area, but more broadly as well. If you want to contact us, we really encourage you to contact us. Here's where you can do it. We've got a phone number, email address. You can request a callback. So we do have planners here every day until the 31st of March. So do feel free, if you're struggling to find the information, you don't know what it is you want to make comment on, give us a call. We can walk you through it. So let's go to the plan for our local areas. And this is where we go through to that map I had a second ago. So you'll see the words community of communities. We recognise how important it is that the Sunshine Coast region is made up of a number of very distinct communities. It's fundamental in this project that one size doesn't fit all, so we're trying to recognise that. And this is where we've tried to identify the boundaries. This is a really good interactive map for each local plan area. So as you hover over, it'll identify the local plan area as proposed. An important part of this consultation is to hear your views on those boundaries. If you want to understand where your boundaries are, where you relate, your property or your interest relates to the boundaries, come to this section, put your address in, and it will clearly identify where you are in relation to those boundaries. Okay, so this is a very handy tool just to know how you sit in relation to the boundaries themselves. So going into the local plan area for Glasshouse-Pumicestone, you can click on this part of the map. There's lots of places you can click on to take you through to your particular area. Here we have a number of different ways to access or consume information. You can look at the photograph, click on it, tell you a bit more. Yeah, each of these little icons again. Scrolling down, we've got another PDF which contains all the information for the Glasshouse-Pumicestone local plan area. Now this, you will see from this particular PDF that the information contained in it is what we've just spoke to through the presentation, which Jason has shown you. There's the role of the LPA in the local plan area in the region, the barometers to indicate the level of change expected, the proposed planning directions, and then down to the proposed local plan area and those boundaries. So, we talked about the boundaries following localities and features, and you can see the area there that the boundaries are including the Pumicestone Passage, but Golden Beaches is related to the Calandra local plan area. So it's coming back again to the local plan page itself. As you can see, there's another interactive map, so if you want to go and look at another area, you can do that quite quickly. We've got over here an FAQ section. This FAQ section is really handy because we've tried to foreshadow some questions that might have come from the communities. We've got the top 10 questions that you may be considering trying to understand about the process. You can go and click on them and they will tell you a bit more about the project and how you can provide feedback, for example, how you can contact us, by phone, email, going to write in. There's lots of options. And then again, the barometers to give you the sense of the expectation of change within the local plan area. And Jason talked about this expectation. It's very, very low in terms of where it is now through to what's been proposed in that new scheme. And bearing in mind the proposal looks through to 2041. Now, this is a very important part of the website. There's a number of places where you can answer a survey. In this particular case, if you live in the Glasshouse-Pumicestone area, you have an interest in it, we want you to click on this and respond to the survey. It's a very simple survey, but it's one of the key areas for you to give your feedback to us. So please, we encourage you to do that. And another ability or option to ask questions is in this particular part of the site. You'll see this throughout the site. There's this option to ask a question. That question will come through to one of us planners and we'll review, and then we will post an answer. But regardless, you can still phone us, you can still email us. There's still the ability to come and speak directly to a planner to get some advice. Before I come back, there's a couple more questions that have popped up. Before I go back to them, I was going to have a look at hot topics. We talked about this in the presentation. I mentioned it earlier. We're constantly reviewing the planning and development and being aware of issues, but also emerging trends and things that are occurring that might affect land use and development more broadly. So they're what we call the hot planning topics. We've got 10 of them. And on the website, we've created these little tiles. So we've got affordable living, car parking, carports, climate change, the design of multiple dwellings, so townhouses, etc., dual occupancies, secondary dwellings, service stations, short-term accommodation, the supply and use of industrial land, and uses in rural areas. So any of these can apply within the local plan area or more broadly across the region. So we've gone and produced a series of documents behind each of those tiles. So I encourage you to click them open, have a read, understand what the matter is, the topic that we're identifying. What we see is how it's currently being managed by the current planning scheme, and then what we think are the issues. What are the issues that we have identified or been become aware of or been informed of over the last number of years and our most recent reviews, and then what we are proposing to do as part of this new scheme. So really keen to hear your views on those topics. And there's a survey directly below those tiles. Go and click on the survey and give us your thoughts on any of them or all of them. Quite happy to hear your thoughts. Really encourage it. So just pop back in before we run out of time and have a look at some of these other questions. So there's a question about infrastructure here, about future expansion of the sewage system out of the Glasshouse Mountains Township here. So do council look after that infrastructure, water, sewer infrastructure, and how does that each relate to the new planning scheme, Jason?
Yeah, look, water and sewage services, the provider of those in the Sunshine Coast region is Unity Water. But once again, we work very closely with Unity Water so that they know what our planning is and we know what their planning is. So my take would be that for Glasshouse, whilst it is serviced by sewer now, unless there was a major change to the land use within that region. There wouldn't probably be too much more in the way of augmentation of the sewerage network in that location. But that's something that's always reviewed as, and the plans for that infrastructure are always reviewed as part of the new planning schemes, and Unity Water provides input into that as part of the process.
And we do speak to those. I mean, the plan scheme has so many stakeholders and so many interests that we do. In the same way we speak to Department of Main Roads, whether it be for the road delivery of state control roads or public transport, we speak to Unity Water as well. So we do. There's a huge number of stakeholders involved in this process. There's been really, really important questions being posted by one of the guests talking about some local residents are not confident online or have varied internet quality. And look, we recognise that. We recognise that you cannot simply do everything online. You can't expect everyone to be know how to email, even to access these online sessions. So we do accept written responses. We do have people on the phones. We've also taken a step to record these sessions. So we will upload the presentation following the session. It takes a couple of days for us to process it and get it uploaded to the website, but it will be there for people to view at their leisure and to then consume that information at their own pace. So yeah, definitely we are here to provide assistance, beyond just what's available on the internet, but the internet is a real place to go.
I'd also say there, Paul, that we have also endeavoured to include information at all of council's libraries, mobile library as well. So if there are members of the community that can't access the online information, then the libraries are a source of information. We also have hard copy surveys that are available through that process as well. So they can be collected from those service centres and libraries as part of this current consultation. And we acknowledge that at the moment we are largely an online consultation, and that's because of the current COVID situation, which is challenging for us all. But we're certainly wanting to ensure that everyone that wishes to engage can engage in this process, and we'll do our best to reach out to those that need further assistance.
Very important point. Look, I've got one last question here. There hasn't been any questions submitted in a while. It's regarding the viewer recognizes the size of blocks at the likes of Aura, Calandra South, and it's concerned about the expansion of potentially small lots within the townships of Beerburn and Glasshouse Mountains. And I think you touched on that in the vision and plan directions about trying to recognise the size of lots in that area.
Yeah, there's certainly, as outlined in the proposed planning directions for this local area, a desire to maintain a larger lot size for the living areas within these locations, as a point of difference from those coastal urban areas that are getting lots that are very small under usual anyone's circumstances. So certainly in these locations, we are recognising that there is a different approach, and the lot sizes will be relatively larger. Also, that housing diversity is something that we are keen to explore in different locations. And certainly one of the planning directions, as I mentioned, was looking at some additional potential for some townhouse sort of dual occupancy type housing potential close to the Glasshouse Mountains town centre, well located to that centre as an option, and certainly would be keen to hear back from the community in relation to that proposed planning direction.
Yeah, I mean, there's another question that's coming around the height limit, 2 stories. Thank you. The guest does refer to 2 stories being fine. So this is the sort of stuff we need to hear in response. So do let us know if you're happy with the height limit of 2-story. And they go on to talk about the design of multiple dwellings and how that would fit within the vision of and the character of the area. So that's certainly within the proposed plan directions for the area.
For sure. Yeah. So it's getting that balance right and getting a making sure we're working with the character of these locations and certainly wanting to maintain that character by and large. And where there are some opportunities, that those opportunities are targeted to well-located areas that may lend themselves to some range of housing types other than just a single detached house.
Yeah, definitely there's those things we would like to hear in feedback. Look, there's one last question here, and it's more of a statement, and I'd say we agree that we would have liked to have been out in person during the consultation process, but unfortunately with the risks around COVID-19, we had to move very quickly in the latter stages of leading to this consultation process to move to online. We do recognise that it is very much one way, certainly for this session. We've tried to do our best to, I suppose, field questions, but this is not the limitations of the engagement. Like I say, you can phone us up anytime, and until such time as the health risks are better understood, this is unfortunately what we're trying to do, to engage with as many people as we can in the limited time we've got.
Yeah, and this is a reasonably long consultation period going through until the end of March, so things can change, and we will reevaluate and review that as we go as to what options we may have to get out into the community later on if the health and safety risks can be managed.
Yeah, I agree. Look, folks, we've just run out of time, or a little bit over time, but thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you for putting your questions through. This is just this has been a small session, an opportunity for us to get the information out. What we're encouraging you to do is come back and call us, email, give us your feedback. You've got until the 31st of March. Tell us about both the regional and local plan directions for your area, or have a look at the hot topics. So yeah, look, thank you very much. We appreciate it, and yeah, give us a call.
Yep, thank you very much.
Bye.